Hey folks, welcome back. 2024. I don't know. I've been doing this music thing for a few years now, and I can't think of anything for 2024, you know? I guess you could say that I'm not strong enough. And that's a Boy Genius song, so I think maybe I'm just gonna not do this next year. My friends, here we are once again. 2023 is officially in the books, and you know what that means. It's time to dwell on the past. 2023 was a busy year for me, as I'm sure that you can pick up from my upload schedule. Sorry about that. Overall, though, 2023 was a year for me. I went to a few cool concerts, visited the United States for the first time since before the pandemic, and even got to be involved in two of my best friends' wedding, which was obviously wonderful. On the other hand, I got really into Radiohead, so that should probably give you an indication of my general mental state.
Comfortable. Not drinking too much. Regular exercise at the gym.
2023 was pretty wild in non-Ben news as well. Everyone's favorite king and queen were coronated into the White House or whatever. LeBron James officially became the greatest basketball player of all time in a true underdog story. Prince Harry failed to not mention his penis in an autobiography nobody asked for. Apparently we learned that Edward Norton is directly related to Pocahontas. You can Google that if you don't believe me. AI made daily life just a little bit more terrifying. And also, I don't know, other stuff. What am I, a newscaster? It's not my job to keep you up to date. Come on now. But anyway, enough with the preamble. I know what you're really here for. To hear me talk about video games. And boy howdy, 2023 was probably the biggest calendar year for game releases since 2017. In fact, maybe of all time. Unfortunately, due to the fact that I generally have between $14 and $25 in my bank account at any given time, I obviously wasn't able to buy a ton of new releases. Fortunately, however, I did play my fair share of really great video games over the course of the last 12 months, and it would bring me nothing but joy to bring you my top 10 of the year. As always, rather than focusing purely on games that released in 2023, we're going to be talking about games that I played for the first time in 2023. With that said, there were a lot of big games that came out that will not be on the list because I'm either waiting for them to go on sale or I just simply don't care about them. Please refer to the list on screen before leaving any whiny comments. So with all that out of the way, I give you Idiot Ben's top 10 games of 2023. Arthur, transition. Before we get into the real list, I wanted to go over some honorable mentions, games that didn't make the top 10, but I still wanted to talk about them, as well as a few great games that I replayed in 2023. As for replays, we got Dark Souls, what do you even want me to say? It's one of the best video games ever made. Silent Hill 2, what do you even want me to say? It's one of the best video games ever made. Sonic Adventure 2, I played a bit of this game on stream, and it's one of those games that I forget how much I truly love it until I really get into it and start playing. A true classic in every way. Silent Hill 4, I obviously replayed this for the episode I made on it, and it's definitely the fourth best Silent Hill game I've ever played. Did you know that they made Power Wash Simulator multiplayer? I didn't know that a game could get more perfect. And of course, House Flipper. This is just a fun-ass game, simple as that. And now for the actual honorable mentions. First we have Superliminal, a super cool Stanley Parable-esque game where you manipulate the environment and have to use perspective to solve puzzles. Probably would have made it onto my main list if it was longer than like 2 hours, but it's still cool and I got it for free on Game Pass, so I really can't complain that much. I'll complain all I fucking want, actually. Simpsons Hit and Run, this game surprised me actually. I was expecting a subpar Grand Theft Auto ripoff that entirely owed its legacy to nostalgia. And that's kind of true, but it's actually a pretty good game. It holds up well, all things considered. After having my mind blown hearing that my wife had never played a Grand Theft Auto game before, we went out and got GTA 5 on the PS5, and I can honestly say that this is the definitive way to play this game. All kinds of fun stuff were added to take advantage of the DualSense controller. Phone calls come through the microphone. When you drive over rumble strips, you feel it in the controller. And, probably my favorite detail, when you're being pursued by cops, the controller blinks red and blue, and you can hear the police radio through it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was yet another asymmetrical multiplayer game. It, delivered as advertised. I will give it that. Parrish fucking loves this game, so it's gotta have something going for it. I personally got my fill after playing like 3 to 4 rounds, but hey, you know, different strokes for different folks, I guess, right? First Class Trouble is a fun social deduction game that takes place on a luxury cruise-style spaceship and has a really cool 50s aesthetic to it. It features proximity chat and sees you and your friends trying to find out who among you are the evil personoids trying to sabotage the whole operation. And it offers a lot of fun ways to kill your friends.
This airlock, the red key card is in there, but you have to hold it open with a skill check.
Okay.
Can I trust you?
Yep.
You
Spacelines from the Far Out. I talked about this game last year, but it's still a lot of fun. If you liked Overcooked and Aliens, you'll like this game. Speaking of which, Overcooked 2! It was basically just Overcooked again, which isn't a complaint. I just don't really know what else to... Cassette Beasts is a Pokemon-style turn-based RPG where you collect monsters with cassette tapes. This is on the honorable mentions because I didn't really get a chance to play more than like an hour at most, but I rather enjoyed what I played. Even if it had way too much dialogue. Okay, I need somebody to level with me here. Am I wrong with this? Am I wrong in thinking that nobody gives a f about the plot of a Pokemon game? Because they keep making these games with these long, unskippable cutscenes, and it seems like common sense to me that nobody cares about the plot of a Pokemon game. Someone must like it, right? Because they keep making them, and they keep putting the big long cutscenes in them. There's gotta be... I feel like I'm losing my grip on reality. Parasite Eve is basically Squaresoft's take on survival horror, and holy shit, it's so good. The only reason it's on my honorable mentions is because I didn't finish it. I was gonna do a Christmas special about it, since it, takes place on Christmas, but, then life got very busy. But it is awesome. I would strongly recommend it. It's an action RPG that really feels like a perfect middle ground between Final Fantasy and Resident Evil. And finally, Fire Emblem, the first one on the Game Boy. This game almost made it into the top 10, and it's really good. I love the battle system, the art style, the characters, but in the end, I just didn't really feel like putting it in the top 10, and I don't need to justify anything to you because this is my list. Make your own. No, but this is a really good game. This was my first time playing a game in the series, and I think I'd like to check out some more of them now. That said, as someone who had never played a Fire Emblem game before, I used to think that there were way too many Fire Emblem characters in Super Smash Bros. But after having played one, I can honestly say there are way too many Fire Emblem characters in Super Smash Bros. Like, Christ almighty, guys, give it a rest. Like, what the hell, right? There can't be that many people, like, oh, we can't have Gino or Waluigi because we gotta have fucking, I don't know, Pyra and Mithra. I know they're from Xenoblade Chronicles, but you know what I'm saying. You folks know that I love horror, but a genre that I love almost as much, if not equally, is comedy. And sometimes when you mix the two together, it works great. Shaun of the Dead, Beetlejuice, Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. Look it up, it's a Canadian TV show and it's awesome, trust me. But I think that a lot of the time the two genres end up overshadowing the other, which is fair. I mean, it's difficult to maintain a feeling of dread and terror while also making the audience laugh, and vice versa. However, last year I found a game that manages to meet that middle ground really well, an indie game called The Upturned. Developed and published by, Zeekers, I guess? You may know them for their hugely popular game Lethal Company, which I haven't played. Don't you worry, folks, I'll hop on that bandwagon in a year or so, when nobody cares anymore. The Upturned is a comedy horror physics game that sees you take control of this well-hatted gentleman as he tries to make it to his luxury suite on floor 1434 of the Upturned Inn. Not to ruin the surprise, but it's the afterlife. Unfortunately for protagonist man, the elevator breaks down every few floors, necessitating him to navigate the seemingly endless horrors that lie within the hotel and search for fuses. I must say, great job at making the protagonist relatable. I too am bipedal and enjoy eating chocolate bars. And although my head is too massive to wear most hats, if it wasn't, I would definitely wear a cool hat like this guy's. Your only real ally is the owner of the hotel, Ick, short for Ichabod, who routinely calls you from the lobby to warn you about incoming horrors, provide context and lore, and progressively reveal what caused you to book a stay at the Upturned. Your only means of defending yourself is, well, really anything that you can get your hands on. This is where the physics aspect of the game comes in. Each floor is littered with various objects, which can be picked up and thrown to fight monsters, create walkways, break windows, etc. The gameplay is pretty fun, but where the Upturn really shines is the comedy, plot, and atmosphere. It has a very silly sense of humor. The monsters are very goofy, everything moves in a really funny way, and Ick often calls you at the worst possible moment to warn you about some impending danger, sometimes neglecting to realize that you've already encountered said danger. The game has a sort of analog horror vibe vibe to it. It's got this minimalist art style accompanied by this jagged low-res filter over everything that gives the impression that you're playing a PC game from the early to mid-90s. It really does a good job of maintaining that dreading feeling of playing a survival horror game. You're tasked with running around confusing, poorly lit corridors with the knowledge that something could jump out at you when you least expect it. You're usually met with a wave of enemies after finding the fuse, forcing you to debate whether you want to stay and fight them off or make a break for the elevator and move on to the next floor. I will say this game does have a little bit of an issue with maintaining originality at certain points. The later you get in the game, the more repeated enemies and environments you'll see. To be fair, it's a very minimal issue, but it still takes away a little bit from the experience, which is why I only put it at number 10. But that said, I really like the upturn. If you're into comedy, survival horror, and a decent challenge, I would definitely recommend giving this game a buy. Despite the fact that Parrish and I celebrated our 10-year anniversary this year, we often struggle to find co-op games that don't make us want to rip each other's heads off. Maybe if someone didn't take every video game so fucking seriously. I'm talking about myself. But last year we managed to find a gem in the form of It Takes Two. It Takes Two follows a married couple, British lady and non-British guy, who find themselves transformed into 5-inch dolls after telling their daughter that they intend on getting a divorce. They're tasked with putting their differences aside and working together to find out how they can break the curse and return to their mortal bodies. This is a game that hinges entirely on two-player co-op. You run around together solving puzzles, defeating enemies, grinding on rails, which is somehow better implemented than it is in most Sonic games. But whatever. You also get abilities that are unique to each character but work in tandem together. Like in one level, husband gets a gun that shoots explosive sap, and wife gets a gun that shoots lit matches that ignites the sap. And that's really just scraping the surface. Each level gives you a new ability that fundamentally changes how the game works. And it's nice because the gimmicks stick around just long enough that they don't get stale. Look, there's something you gotta know about me. I love tiny characters who live in normal size environments and use household items for their non-intended purposes. I am a sucker for that kind of thing. Chibi Robo cleaning floors with a toothbrush, love it. Arietti putting her hair up with a bag clip, don't even get me started. And that's this game's whole aesthetic. It takes place in and around the family home and sees you fighting a vacuum, a toolbox, a rhinoceros beetle. The aforementioned sap and match guns were created by squirrels living in the family's tree. The sap gun is made out of a bottle cap and a hand sanitizer pump, and the match gun is made out of a hollowed out pen with a flint inside that ignites the matches as they shoot out. Oh, I love this shit. I will admit that the main characters are very annoying, especially this guy. The more I played, the more I understood why his wife would want to divorce his ass.
Hey, what about me? Huh? I was part of this too. Where's my hero love? Oh! I look dead. Am I dead? Nah, I'm sorry. This space monkey toy thing, he doesn't know what he's talking about, okay? Let's just get out of this creepy place.
I know that the point is that they're both flawed and they grow and learn as the game goes along, but God, just shut up for once, bro. Also, the mocap makes the characters look robotic and terrible. It kind of reminds me of Food Fight, where all the characters are just jumping around, flailing their arms like assholes, but whatever, it's not a big deal. Overall, if you want a super fun and creative two-player co-op game, give It Takes Two a shot. I promise you'll have a lot of fun with it. Did you guys know that I'm a big fan of the TV show SpongeBob SquarePants? Holy shit, a white kid born in the 90s likes SpongeBob? Arthur, do an explosion over my head. Alert every news site that you can think of. It's true, I have an affinity for the sponge, I must admit, and perhaps my favorite piece of sponge-related media, aside from the cartoon and the first movie and the third movie, is a little video game from 2003 called SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. I won't bore you with the details since I've talked about this many times before, but I can honestly say that I never thought I'd get another SpongeBob platformer on the same level as SSBBB. However, in 2023 I was proven wrong when THQ Nordic dropped SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake. Coming 3 years after the achievement that was SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, they went and did it again, those sons of bitches. No one said they could, but they did. They made an entirely new SpongeBob 3D platformer. You folks probably know my stance on this game since I made a whole video about it. But I really like this game. It took me by surprise. Cosmic Shake is a wonderful game. Not only is it a lot of fun, but it ignites that feeling that SpongeBob gave me as a kid. After SpongeBob and Patrick create a rift in the space-time continuum, a cosmic shake, if you will, Bikini Bottom is thrown into a nonsensical, goopy dream state, allowing each level to have a fantastical theme. Instead of jellyfish fields, you got Wild West jellyfish fields, Goo Lagoon becomes Pirate Goo Lagoon, the kelp forest is replaced by a prehistoric kelp forest, and so on and so forth. The premise allowed the developers to have a lot more creative freedom with the events and visuals. Each level feels like its own self-contained world, which really gives Cosmic Shake a big 3D platformer feel along the lines of Banjo-Kazooie and Mario. The levels are considerably more linear this time around, but I think it was to this game's benefit. You're still given a lot of freedom to explore each level, but at the same time it streamlines the experience really well, not to mention that there's a good amount of replay value with extra stuff added once you've completed each level. And thankfully no expense was spared in the comedy department. This game was made by Sponge fans for Sponge fans. Unlike last time, the whole cast is here. Not only do we have the actual real Mr. Krabs, but the background characters are fully voice acted by the actors who played them in the cartoon. My leg! You know what I'm saying? It makes the game feel like an extended interactive episode of SpongeBob. And man, what more could a little guy like me want? Plus, alternate costumes. That alone would have ensured a purchase for me. I don't know about you fellas. SpongeBob Cosmic Shake gets the Idiot Ben seal of approval. Arthur, put a graphic on screen to represent that. Great stuff. Moving swiftly on from a game that I made a video about in 2023 to a game I made a video about in 2023, coming in at number 7 is Sonic Heroes. Sonic Heroes was the first mainline game to be released following Sega's merciful decision to pull the plug on console development. And you know what? What a game to start with. As I'm sure you can imagine, I went into Sonic Heroes with pretty low expectations. Not bottom of the ocean low, but let's be real here. There's no knowing what to expect going into a Sonic game, especially a 3D one. But let me tell you, man, Sonic Heroes actually rules. It's got its fair share of stupid bullshit, obviously. It's a PS2 era Sonic game. But in this case, the good outweighs the bad by a long shot. Stepping away from the plot-heavy theatrical style of our Speedy Blue Buddies Dreamcast adventures, Heroes goes for a more traditional approach akin to the 2D games of the Genesis era. Don't get me wrong, I love Sonic Adventure 2. But Eggman does try to murder Sonic by launching him into the vacuum of space while holding Amy at gunpoint. It's just barely teetering on completely over the top and insane. Each level is largely stylized and imaginative, using loud and distinct color palettes and a wide variety of music. It makes the stages quite a lot more memorable than those seen on the aforementioned Dreamcast titles. Seaside Hill, Grand Metropolis, Casino Park, Rail Canyon, Mystic Mansion, so many iconic levels that I can remember almost every square inch of. Mostly because you have to play this game 4 times to complete it, but still. And on that note, the gameplay impressed me a lot. Going in, I was very skeptical as to how they were going to implement the whole 3 different characters with different abilities thing, but honestly, they kind of nailed it. Not only does each stage have sections that are tailor-made for each character, but the game gives you a ton of opportunities to swap back and forth depending on the situation, and each character has several abilities that make them useful in multiple ways. Knuckles is not only the combat guy, but he can also smash obstacles, float on fans, and collect rings in a line by changing the character formation. Tails flies, obviously, but he also has the Thunder Shoot ability, which stuns enemies and even kills them at higher levels, and it can be used to hit distant targets. Sonic fast running, of course, but can also be used to spin around propellers and knock shields out of enemies' hands. And also, all of the other Sonic characters are there too, and they are very cool, such as Shadow, and Vector, and Rabbit, and stupid-ass, dumbass robot character. Do it. Go defend Omega or whatever in the comments. Go for it. It'll change nothing, and you know that. But let's be honest here, folks. When you're talking about Sonic, it always comes down to the tunes, and holy moly does Sonic Heroes have some major jams. Basically what I'm trying to get at is Sonic Heroes is awesome and honestly kind of underrated in my opinion. There aren't very many games that genuinely convince me to play through them 4 times, but here we are. If you know me well, you'll know that one of my guilty pleasures is zombies. Just kidding, I don't have guilty pleasures. It's my philosophy that you shouldn't feel ashamed for enjoying something, even if it's as lazy and oversaturated as zombies. Okay, I'm a little ashamed. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but there's something about zombies. No matter how terrible a movie or a TV show is, if it's got zombies in it, it's got my attention. I've watched like 6 seasons of The Walking Dead thinking the whole time, wow, this fucking sucks. And yet I keep going. What's wrong with me? However, sometimes things have zombies and are actually awesome. Great transition. For example, Left 4 Dead 2. It's really quite mind-blowing that I have never even tried to play Left 4 Dead before 2023. Not only does it have zombies, but it's also made by Valve. I love Valve. I love the Portal games, Half-Life 1, and the small amount of Half-Life 2 I've played. Hell, I even played my fair share of Team Fortress 2 in high school, and I don't even like competitive first-person shooters. You're telling me this whole time there's been a 4-player co-op PvE zombie shooter game made by a company that exclusively makes bangers? Hello? Anybody home? But yeah, basically Parrish and 2 of my good pals Brooklyn and Dakota introduced me to Left 4 Dead 2. And man, it quickly became one of my favorite video games. I feel like I don't have to explain it because I'm probably the only person in the world who hasn't played this game, but I'm gonna do it anyway because, you know, gotta fill time somehow. Left 4 Dead is so much fun, man. You and 1 to 3 friends are tasked with surviving a series of levels packed to the absolute brim with hordes of zombies, picking up supplies and weapons along the way. Each campaign can be completed in a couple hours, making it a great game to sit and play for hours or just as a quick one-off. On top of the regular zombies are special infected, extra powerful zombies that have special abilities. Boomers that explode and cover you in goop if you're too close, jockeys that jump on your shoulders and immobilize you until a friend's able to help, tanks that practically one-shot you and take like 5,000 bullets to kill, and of course, one of the most terrifying enemies in any game, the witch. Nothing matches the tension of trying to figure out how to sneak past a witch without angering her as she sits there, seething and growling like a territorial wild animal. And that leads into the fantastic sound design. Left 4 Dead forces you to always be aware of what's going on around you, and that includes vigilant listening. Not only does the game use music to indicate incoming danger, but each special infected has their own sound cues that subtly warn you of their presence. Smokers emit a dry, straining cough, boomers burp and heave as if they're vomiting, witches can be heard sobbing from rooms away. Coupled with the fantastic atmosphere, creepy environments, and trademark Valve sense of humor.
No hate, no war, only love, only love. Allison, no zombies. Go back to poetry stool.
Jesus, lady, I'm hiding from zombies and reading this was the most terrible thing that happened to me today.
Allison, roses are red, violets are blue. You suck.
Left 4 Dead is an absolute blast. I cannot recommend it enough. And, as if all of that wasn't good enough, this is a Source Engine game, so obviously there is a shitload of mods available through the Steam Workshop. Not only are there entire community-made campaigns, but you can also do things like change the playable characters to the cast of Five Nights at Freddy's, turn Spitters into Marge and Chargers into Donkey Kong, and make it so that the Pepsi Man music plays when a tank attacks. What more convincing do you need? This game is $12.99. To my absolute delight, one of the many games that people went bonkers over upon release this year was a delectable little indie game called Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower is a Wario Land-inspired 2D platforming game starring this guy, a fat Italian guy who runs and jumps. Interesting. Arthur, write that down. It's got potential to be something great. Now, I'm going to tell you this guy's name soon, but if you're anything like me, I'm sure you thought, this guy looks like he has a vaguely racist name. Like, not super racist, but I wouldn't say it around my Nona, that's for sure. Granted, of course, I don't have a Nona because I'm not Italian. But that's beside the point. Jokes aside, our protagonist's name is Peppino Spaghetti. So maybe a touch more racist than I thought. But either way, his struggling pizzeria is put at risk when the evil pizza face threatens to destroy it with a laser mounted atop the nearby pizza tower. Filled to the brim with Florentine rage, Peppino decides to scale the unforgiving tower to save his livelihood. Pizza Tower is a challenging, breakneck, speed-focused 2D platformer. You'll go through 5 different floors, each with its own unique theme, sprinting to the end of the stage while collecting pizza toppings, finding secrets in bonus rooms, fighting enemies, and building combos to achieve the best possible grade. Once you've reached the end of the stage, it becomes pizza time. The music goes insane and you're tasked with making your way back to the beginning of the stage as fast as possible, usually taking a different route than the one you took the first time around. It's genuinely one of the fastest games I've ever played, but the interesting thing about it is the fact that the speed isn't just down to how fast Peppino runs. He's definitely faster than the average pizza chef, but Pizza Tower uses its level design, enemy and collectible placement, Peppino's different abilities, and the game's combo system. Although each level allows for exploration, you're expected to maintain a certain level of speed throughout the level, jumping at right moments to avoid pitfalls and keep moving, attacking at the right moment to dispatch enemies and keep your combo going. The game is so focused on speed that you don't even need to keep holding a directional button to keep Peppino going. Hold down the trigger and he'll build into an all-out sprint, which is great because it means that you can focus entirely on jumping, ducking, and attacking. It's one of those games that has fantastic replay value without having much post-game content because you're encouraged to return to levels you've already beaten and find secrets and achieve a higher grade. And speaking of the levels, holy rigatoni. This game has a ton of super creative levels. It almost comes off like each one was designed by a different person because the sheer amount of variety between the levels is staggering. Every level throws something new at you, whether you're rolling around in a barrel, being chased by monsters, riding a giant smoked sausage covered in sticky cheese, gun. Sometimes you get a gun. The music is just crazy and funky and fits the vibe so well. And probably my favorite thing about Pizza Tower, the art design. Don't even get me started, man. This is one of the most visually stylistic games I've ever played, full stop. Everything has this 90s cartoon-inspired, exaggerated art style that uses heavily saturated colors, and in the best way possible, looks like it very well could have been drawn entirely in MS Paint. It really complements the stupid, over-the-top sense of humor present in every square inch of this game. It's fantastic. I don't really know what else to say about Pizza Tower, but if you're looking for a super fast-paced 2D arcade platformer with considerable challenge, give this game a go. It's, dare I say, one spicy meatball. Moving from a 2D platformer starring a suspiciously agile middle-aged Italian man to a different 2D platformer starring a suspiciously agile middle-aged Italian man, it's Super Mario Bros. Wonder. The first 2D Mario game since New Super Mario Bros. U in 2012, Nintendo decided that they could actually be bothered to give a shit this time around, and wouldn't you know it, it resulted in one of the best video games ever made. It's funny, you know, despite Mario being Nintendo's mascots and one of the most recognizable fictional characters of all time, they've kind of spent the last 2 decades phoning it in when it comes to his 2D adventures. Excluding Mario Maker, which doesn't really count, let's be honest, there hasn't been a 2D Mario game befitting the series' legacy since New Super Mario Bros. All the way back in 2006. It's so weird, right? I can't imagine having the rights to one of the most popular and internationally recognizable intellectual properties of all time and just consistently making unfinished, mediocre pieces of garbage. You'd think Nintendo would know better by now. However, the era of half-assing, or should I say, the era of half-assing traditional Mario games is hopefully in the past, because Super Mario Bros. Wonder is awesome. This game is non-stop fun from start to finish. They're constantly throwing new mechanics, new enemies, new ways to play at you. So many new guys in this game. You got this guy, these guys, can't forget about this guy. You got the watermelon piranha plant, the balloon fish called bloomps, mummies that you gotta unravel, popcorn. There's also so many new kickables. Gone are the days of merely kicking Koopas and Buzzy Beetles. Now you got armadillos that don't bounce off walls, snails. I'm pretty sure there's more, I just can't think of any. This guy? Jokes aside, one of my biggest issues with a lot of the mainline Mario games in recent years, excluding Odyssey, especially 3D Land and 3D World, is that every level has some gimmick, you know? They throw some new mechanic at you and make you deal with it for the entire level, like reversing platforms or raising and sinking water or whatever. And that's fine, I like a gimmick in a platform game, but it can't be the whole game. You know? You need a palate cleanser in between. Mario Wonder strikes the perfect balance with the introduction of the Wonder Flower. Basically, each level has one of these, and when you collect it, it turns the level cuckoo bananas briefly until you find a collectible, and then the game goes back to normal. It's straight up exciting to find the Wonder Flower because you're thinking, man, I wonder what kind of crazy nonsense is going to happen. Sometimes it goes slow-mo, or you go into a top-down Zelda-style perspective. Other times there's a symphony of piranha plants, and it's fucking awesome. I love this game. My only gripe with this game is that it gave ammo to those morons who think that making jokes about Mario doing drugs is funny. Oh, Mario's doing mushrooms, bro. That's why everything's so crazy. He's going down pipes. Just shut up, okay? Disconnect your internet, please. It's not funny. Enough. There's also 3 new power-ups. The bubble flower that enables you to shoot bubbles, and the drill mushroom lets you burrow into floors and ceilings, and of course, the elephant fruit, which enables you to become elephant, and it's wicked. And speaking of elephant, it's related, trust me, the music in this game is so good. The music is also adaptive. It changes depending on what's happening on screen. It gets muffled when you go underground. And by far my favorite, when you change into elephant form, the music changes into a rendition featuring French horns and tubas. Truth be told, I do have a few little gripes with this game. The multiplayer has its share of issues. The art style, while I like it a lot, is still just a little bit too New Super Mario Bros. For my liking. And finally, the talking flowers. I hate these motherfuckers. You know how people sometimes describe someone as having a punchable face? This guy has a punchable voice.
Can a guy get some shut-eye around here? How is this happening? What's with all the ice blocks? Kind of annoying. Oh, was it something I said?
Yes, but overall those are minor issues. Mario Wonder is amazing, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for 2D Mario games. One of the incredible things about video game is that it allows fantasy to become reality. Everybody wants to be a Star Wars and fight with the lightsaber. Everybody wants to be an Indiana Jones and swing the lasso and say, "Ooh, I hate snakes." Some people want to be a lawyer. There's nothing wrong with that. But most of all, everyone wants to be Spider-Man. Everybody wants to swing around New York City and say funny things like, "Party's over, chumps." Or at least everyone who's cool wants that. And this year, my childhood dream finally became a reality when I played one of the most anticipated games ever. Spider-Man, the first one. This is one of those games that you play and you think, how in the hell did it take until 2018 to make a Spider-Man game like this? It's just perfect. It's exactly what a Spider-Man game should feel like. The combat is fast-paced and in-depth. The open world is alive and bursting with side quests and things to do. The story is engaging and feels very Spider-Man. And most important of all, the web swinging. Oh my god, it's so good. It has the perfect weight and resistance to it. You have a bunch of special moves that allow you to do stuff like burst forward, snap to a ledge and then launch off it, building speed in the process. I don't think I've ever played a game where simply getting from point A to point B is genuinely the most fun part. When I unlocked fast travel, I was like, what, are you stupid? Why the hell would I ever want to fast travel anywhere? But that leads into another of my favorite things about this game, the presentation. Because when you do fast travel, you get a little cutscene of Spider-Man taking the subway. Now that's the Big Apple for you, am I right, fellow New Yorkers? Now the bar is obviously set pretty high when getting around is the best part of the game, but thankfully Spider-Man delivers in pretty much every other department as well. The combat is so much fun. 100 guys will surround you and you just clown them. You make them look like fools. But that isn't to say that it's easy. You have to pay attention, dodge at the right time, use your spider abilities accordingly. You unlock gadgets that help you out in combat, little shooting drones, web bombs, tripwires, the suspension matrix, which is crazy. How did Spidey invent that? How's he so smart? You telling me this guy's got spider powers and he's super smart? Does this guy have any weaknesses? Well, as it turns out, yes he does. Spider-Man's weaknesses include social ineptitude, inability to talk to girls, and lacking the foresight that Dr. Octavius is going to become Dr. Octopus, which is just like, rookie mistake, man. Come on, have you never read a comic book before? And that leads into the plot. It's pretty good. I mean, it's not going to blow your mind, but like, it's Spider-Man. What did you expect? I will say that I do like this iteration of Peter Parker. He's in his mid-20s living on his own in New York, and he's been Spider-Man for just under a decade at this point. I'm really glad that they didn't just try to do the origin story thing again, because my god, we all know what happened. Spider bit him, now he can climb walls, Uncle Ben dies. We know all this happened, okay? It happened in the 60s. There are a few things that I wasn't massively huge on. The music is very generic, orchestral MCU sounding stuff, which it fits the game, sure, but god, it's so boring, man. Throw some Denzel Curry in there. He's really good. There are also these horrible, albeit short, segments where you have to stop playing the most fun video game of all time to sneak around as MJ or Miles. You know, two people who aren't Spider-Man. Well, I mean, he's not Spider-Man yet, but you know what I mean. Also, this guy is so fucking lame, bro. Spider-Man has so many cool villains, and this guy is the main villain? The guy with the negative filter on his body? Come on, man. Oh, Ben, he was in the comics. First off, nerd. And secondly, I don't care, okay? Spider-Man has so many cool villains. You got Mysterio, and Rhino, and Lizard, and you give us Martin Lee? They don't even call him by his cool comic book name, Mr. Negative. I guess you could say that I'm being Mr. Negative right now. I don't know, I'm just saying stuff at this point. But yeah, overall, Sony presents Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 for the PlayStation 4 featuring Peter Parker as Spider-Man is a really, really good game. Don't let my sarcasm and nitpicking make you think otherwise. Plus, you unlock alternate costumes, which makes it a 10 out of 10 in my eyes right there. But even better, one of them is like a cel-shaded comic book Spider-Man, which just, oh, it's so this game was made for me. I love this game so much that I'm not even upset that they did that thing where they reboot a series and just call it by the name of the series. And I usually hate that shit. Game developers and just people who make entertainment in general, take notes, okay? This is an example of when you can do that. These are not. There really is no video game studio out there quite like From Software. They are out here killing it time after time after time. And they also made Dark Souls 2. Did you know that they came out with an Armored Core game this year? The future of big shooting robots is upon us, folks. I love FromSoft's Soul series. Dark Souls 1, 3, and Elden Ring are some of my favorite games ever. And I also really liked what I played of Demon's Souls. But there's one that I bought on release, played for a bit, and couldn't really get into it at the time. And that game is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. However, at the beginning of 2023, after replaying Dark Souls for the upteenth time to make a video about it, I decided to give Samurai Dark Souls another try, and holy shit. This game is phenomenal. It takes the Souls formula and really flips it on its head. Rather than rolling, blocking, and waiting for an opening to whittle down your opponent's health, Sekiro is heavily focused on parrying and countering your opponent's attacks. Every enemy has a visible stamina meter, and although it is beneficial to get their health down since their stamina drains faster, if you can manage to break their posture, you can go in for a death blow regardless of where their health's at. It creates this awesome dynamic where you're trying to stagger them and get the upper hand while keeping an eye on your own stamina. That said though, there's a massive variety in enemies. Some bigger baddies have multiple death blows, essentially making them an enemy that you have to fight twice, and some enemies are even designed in a way that encourages the traditional Dark Souls style of combat, the Guardian Ape being a good example. And on that note, the bosses. Oh my god, they're insane. Gyobu fights you on horseback, necessitating you to dash out of the way while he charges at you. Jinichiro overwhelms you with sword strikes before shooting fucking lightning at you. It's a lot easier to avoid than it looks. Your dad, it's a hard boss fight. What more do you want me to... Just play the game. But it would be a disservice to focus primarily on the combat because Sekiro has so much more going on. Sekiro is also largely a stealth game. It's so much fun to sneak around and try your best to take out as many guys as you can without being detected. You don't sit there for 2 hours waiting for an opening. The stealth mechanics are forgiving in the sense that it doesn't feel like it's wasting your time, something that a lot of stealth games tend to struggle with in my opinion. Though I am very bad at video games, to be fair. But probably my favorite thing about this game is the aesthetic and environments. Every area has this wintry feudal Japan vibe that's equal parts gloomy and breathtaking. Ashina Castle is a massive fortress filled with highly trained ninjas and samurai. Mibu Village is a dismal underground town inhabited by lost souls and Japanese folkloric ghosts. Fountainhead Palace is a beautiful flooded castle. And by far, my favorite area is Senpo Temple at Mount Kongo. It's a monastery filled with deranged monks, corrupted by their obsession with immortality. It's such a cool concept for a level. Overall, I could talk for hours about this game, but in a nutshell, Sekiro is so good, I can't recommend it enough. Unless, of course, you like succeeding in video games, in which case I would maybe skip this one. Well, folks, here we are. Prepare your mind to be blown, because Idiot Ben's Game of the Year is none other than Resident Evil 4. Yeah, duh. Wow, shocker. Resident Evil guy likes Resident Evil. Alert every news site. The original Resident Evil 4 is one of the most beloved video games of all time. The story, the combat, the horror, Leon being portrayed as the coolest guy on planet Earth while saying the dumbest shit you've ever heard.
I really don't give a damn. Rain or shine, you're going down. Thanks. That should keep me company, 'cause boredom kills me. I knew you'd be fine if you landed on your butt.
So it's safe to say that remaking Resident Evil 4 is a big undertaking. It basically has to be perfect or people will lose their minds. And my god, wouldn't you believe it, this game is perfect. It took everything that made the Resident Evil 2 remake amazing and flawlessly implemented it to match Resident Evil 4. Everything that made the 2005 game a classic is present in the remake. Treasure collecting, stunning and kicking, inventory management, rail shooting segments, enemies that react to you and require split-second decision making. But it also adds new stuff to make it a unique experience. Leon has a parry and a dodge that make combat more engaging, the layouts of the levels are changed up a bit, the enemies actually speak European Spanish instead of Mexican Spanish, so that's a little bonus. There are also new enemies, namely brutes, big tough ganados with minotaur heads and giant hammers. The remake is much scarier than the original. Don't get me wrong, Resident Evil 4 was scary, but it leaned a lot more into action than previous titles, whereas the remake manages to strike a balance really well. And, thankfully, the thing that I was most worried about going in, Leon is still a goofball. In fact, he probably has even more zingers than in the original.
I am flattered. I'm a one-lady type of guy. You talk too much. Failed! Story of my life.
When I made it to the end of the village segment and Leon said,
"Where's everyone going? Bingo?"
that's when I knew that this was the real deal. Ashley is so much better in the remake than the original. She's fleshed out, more relatable, willing to help. She even cracks jokes with Leon. It's a huge upgrade to how insufferable she was in the original. It probably does make more sense for her to be insufferable since she's the president's daughter, but I don't know. You fight walking suits of armor in this game, so maybe we can probably give that one a pass. The RE engine never ceases to amaze me. Maybe I'm just a negative Nancy or an anxious Andrew, but I'm always worried when they announce a Resident Evil remake. Before this game came out, I thought, is the sort of predetermined aesthetic of the RE engine going to be able to replicate the magic of Resident Evil 4? And goddamn, they did it. This game is visually stunning. The environments are dreary and creepy. Everything has that disgusting yet beautiful polish that made games like Resident Evil 7, 2 Remake, and Village look so amazing. The Ganado are scary and sickly. In fact, every last character model looks better in the remake. And I don't mean graphically, because yeah, duh, the original came out almost 20 years ago. I mean aesthetically, the remake having much more of an emphasis on horror is shown through the monsters and character designs. The Chainsaw Man looks a lot more imposing, and the game really focuses heavily on his deranged, bloodshot eyes. Krauser looks more sickly and monstrous, I guess. The Regenerators are somehow 10 times scarier than they were in the original, which is really saying something. Salazar just, ugh, look at him. I didn't think it was possible to make this little twerp even nastier, but here we are. Honestly, I don't even know what else to say here. It's not very often that you get a remake that's just as good, if not better, than the original, especially when the original is widely considered to be one of the best games of all time. Please play this game. It's so good. Can't wait for that Resident Evil 5 remake. It's a good thing the plot and themes have aged tremendously well and will not need to be changed in any way whatsoever. Well, folks, it's been a long journey, but there you have it. My favorite games that I played this year. What were some of your favorite games that you played in 2023? What's that? This is pre-recorded? Oh, so they couldn't reply even if they wanted to? Gotcha. Why don't you leave a comment down below and tell me? I felt gross saying that. I think we can all agree that 2023 was a pretty buck-wild year for video games. I feel like you could put a down payment on the house with the amount of money that it would have costed to buy every new release last year. That is, of course, if the housing market wasn't in shambles. But hey, maybe things will be better this year.